places, experiential landscape, person's attachment to place and meaning of space and place. Yeah. So basically, Associate Professor Dr. Mazlina Mansor teaches the subject taught by her includes community design studio, urban design, and introduction to landscape architecture. Okay, so currently she is an academic advisor for the Bachelor of Landscape Architecture. So basically, that is the brief introduction about our speaker today. Without further ado, I would like to invite Associate Professor Dr. Mansor to deliver her speech or her talk. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you to Madam Chairperson, Dr. Azila. A bit of correction. Currently, I'm not the academic advisor, so that one's already finished last year. All right. Thank you all for participating in this webinar, and also thank you to the committee for organizing the webinar series. So this is series number 2, inshallah. So, but first, let me share my presentation slides with you. Right? Can you see this clearly?
Yes, madam.
Right. Right. Yeah. The topic that I'm going to deliver for our webinar today is called Islamic-Conscious Design in Landscape Architecture. It simply means that we are designing with an awareness of Islam, or an awareness that we are the Khalifah on this earth. All right. Let me show you the contents. Yeah, the contents of our talk today. So I'll be speaking in the context of landscape architecture field of study, but I think this is also relevant in the context of the built environment profession. So I've arranged the contents into 3 parts. The first is talking just a brief overview of what landscape architecture is all about in terms of the components, the scope of practice, the resources that we are dealing with when we are designing, which we call spatial materials, as well as the aim of landscape architecture as a whole in the professions. The second part will be the Islamic conscious design, in which simply means that how we are designing using the spatial materials, the resources that Allah has given us, and how it relates with the Islamic approach or Islamic context. Yeah, the contents will be the role of Muslim, the source of guidance, as well as some examples of what we can learn, a lesson from the Quran in terms of dealing with the that we are going to use for designing. And lastly is the conclusion in terms of our roles. Okay, for the first slide, this is actually the diagram that shows how landscape architecture, our profession, sits in the context of the built environment profession, in which we can see here that it is actually integrated with the profession in the built environment. For example, the landscape architecture professions overlap also with the urban design planning, as well as architecture, or even a bit of interior. Basically, we are what we call a site planning team. When we do a project, of course, we will embark to work together, not alone as landscape architects. Okay, just an overview of what landscape architecture is all about. In terms of definition, landscape architecture concerns about the planning and design of land and water, meaning that we will be mostly dealing with the natural resources that Allah has given us on this earth, but the ultimate aim is for us to use it properly for the benefits of the society. But also, we have to understand this system in order for us to offer a good design for people to use. Meaning that these are the resources that we are dealing with when we are designing. We need to understand about landscape processes, and then we need to understand the macro scale, like, from the regional context up until the smallest spaces, such as gardens for the use of people, right? So this is what we call landscape fabric. In terms of the scope of practice, what I can put here is I can categorize our scope of practice into 3 categories. Okay, the first one is what we call landscape resource planning and assessment, which is looking at the a larger scale context of designing, for example, a region, but it is mostly dealing with the natural resources. The aim is for us to analyze the capability or the suitability of the land in order for us to make decision in terms of land use planning, or in terms of conservation, or in terms of the distribution of the resources. Okay, that one is the bigger aspect of our scope of practice. The second one is the most common one, in which we will be dealing most, which is called site planning of urban, town, community design, park recreation, historic preservation, reclamation, and so on. So this is actually the process of analysis, bringing in the programming, bringing in the requirements by the clients, and so on, into a creative design, so that we can offer the best design for the site as possible. So that one is site planning. And last but not least is the detailed landscape design. Detailed landscape design meaning that detailings of the selections of the components involved in landscape architecture, such as the hardscape and softscape, for a certain theme design, such as golf course, theme park, gardens, waterfront, and so on. But detailed landscape design also happen in site planning. So we have to detail up the components that we are going to use in the design. So that is basically the scope of practice that landscape architect, or what we call landscape people, use to design. Yeah. So in a summary, what I can summarize here is that most importantly, landscape architects, we are dealing with the outdoor rooms. We don't have any enclosure. Therefore, we have to manipulate, or we have to compose the outdoor rooms, such as the ground plane, the wall plane, as well as sometimes, occasionally, the sky plane, to define a space, so that we can have rooms, we can have ceiling, and so on, so that people can have and so on. So I've put here at least 5 categories of what we call spatial materials, and mostly those spatial materials are the natural environment lah, the natural resources that we can get from this earth. The first one is landform. Second is the softscape or the plants. The third one is the water element, and what we call the built form is the hardscape and structures. Okay, the aim of the landscape architecture practice, of course, sustainability. So we want to protect and regenerate natural system and processes. We want to protect and conserve. Also, we want to enhance the natural places, the natural environment, and protect the resources. But at the same time, we want to build, we want to design, we want to enhance the built places, so that we can use it comfortably. So regardless of the various scope of work and aim of the projects, the common ground for landscape architecture is to make sure we steward the land. So the stewardship of land becomes prevalent. I think in terms of sustainability, nowadays it does not only concern the built environment protection, but also it has been widely practiced by many professions. Doesn't matter whether it is fashion design or economics and so on and so forth. Sustainability is the keywords now, the SDGs. Yeah. Sustainability is actually came into inception with the Brundtland report in 1986, if I'm not mistaken, the words that came from the Western scholars lah. But if we look at the role of Muslims, we know that actually sustainability exists since the time of Islam. It is being perfected by Prophet ﷺ through his teachings and through his teaching of the Quran and Sunnah. That is through our awareness that we are the Khalifah. So Khalifah meaning that we have to make sure the earth is sustainable. So we are the responsible as the vicegerent, trustee and administrator of the earth resources. So actually this profession allow us as a Muslim to profess our submission to Allah and to make sure that when we are doing work, it is an ibadah for us. So ultimately, we strive to achieve an environment that is what we call artful, orderly, efficient, aesthetic, ecologically sensitive, and then we combine it with our understanding. We have to learn to understand the natural features and ecological system. And our guide is the Quran and the Sunnah will become our ultimate green guide, I call it. So because it's there already in the Quran. The word sustainability exists before the Brundtland report exists, yeah, for us as a Muslim. Okay, so this is just a summary, the source of guidance for a Muslim, of course, Quran, Sunnah, and Sharia law. So these are the definitions. I'm going to read it one by one. All right, yeah. The topic of this presentation is called Islamic-Conscious design. It's basically telling us that we need to design to make sure we obtain an ideal environment that we design with care, but also embedded with Islamic behavior-based conduct. And of course, if we have that, that will ultimately produce places that is balanced with unity, but with diversity, respectful of the place and satisfy the needs and values of people, because eventually we'll be designing for the comfort of the Ummah. Yeah, and the tasks it's our privilege as landscape architects. We have to be proud because we are the one who will use the natural resources to perform our duty as Khalifah and to make sure that it is an ibadah. We are proud, but at the same time, we must be scared because it is such a big responsibility. So in dealing with land, water and other resources, a Muslim bound to follow the guidance prescribed by Islam in his daily life, which is in terms of interaction and permissible actions. Okay, this is the second part of the contents. Actually, what I'm trying to present here is that I'm going to take the resources that landscape architect use, which is the land, the lay of the land, water, softscape or vegetation, or what we call soft landscape element, as well as the built form in terms of hardscape and the and try to look into what Allah says in the Quran in relation to the resources, and inshallah, most probably from this presentation, maybe we can learn a bit in terms of the lessons or even the reminder by Allah or even warning from Allah SWT about the resources. Okay, if you look at these images, there are two images that I put here. Depicting the natural environment. If you look at the photographs, the pictorial image, we can see there are such a beautiful landscape scenery, which is Allah's creation, the natural environment without human intervention. So there is no flaw in this image, even though the right hand side, the photograph on the right hand side is a bit blur, but it is because of my mistake. I should have put a clearer image. This is showing that Allah is the greatest planner through His creation. There is no flaw. Even when we look at the desert-like environment with a harsh, very hot environment, we can see that it is so beautiful. It has its beauty. We cannot find the flaws. Even though if a person live in that desert, he will die in one day because of the harsh condition. So that is the beauty of Allah creation in terms of the natural landscape. So what we can learn from the ayat, for example, here I put one, Surah An-Nahl, ayat 15, and he has cast into the earth firmly set mountains, lest it shift with you, and made rivers and road that you may be guided, showing that the majesty of the mountain is actually has a certain function to regulate the motion and speed of the earth, to hold the earth, pasak bumi, what we call, and the Quran has also made this benefit of mountain very prominent. At the same time, it's giving us hint in terms of principle of design. Natural paths are routes which are formed along the banks of stream, ravine, and river, which we can adapt it in our design principles. All right. Looking at the lesson from the natural landscape in terms of the aesthetic principle, what we can learn from the beauty of the natural is that we are taking the examples in terms of the principles of design. Okay, we've learned this in the Western books, right? There is a distinct, recognizable, consistent pattern, order, coherent, unity, harmonious relationship, balance, proportion, simplicity, sense of place. We learn it in the books, landscape architecture books, that when we are designing, when we are composing, this should be the design composition with these principles. As you can see, put one photos here, a very nice built environment using one of the spatial material that is most obvious, which is the landform, right? But it won't be as perfect as Allah's creation, because the Quran has mentioned on the apparent harmony, unity among the natural element in terms of the rock formation, the ground, the vegetation, the animal life, expressed in many of the surah. For example, here I've some of the surah put here, in Surah 6, Surah 31, Surah 13, talking about the principles of design. So these are the lessons that we learn. Meaning that we don't have to learn from Western books. It's already in the Quran, talking about balance, all those kind of principles that we have been using in our designing of the landscape for people to use. Okay, learning that the facts that we are the Khalifah, as Allah has put here in Surah Al-An'am, ayat 165, and then there are many more ayat regarding us as human, as Khalifah. Allah says, and it is He, God, who has made you successors, or Khalifah, upon the earth, and has raised some of you above others in degree of rank, that He may try you through what He has given you. Indeed, your Lord is swift in penalty, but indeed He is forgiving and merciful. Right? So knowing the fact that we are Khalifah, of course, we have to foster the environmental stewardship, especially for landscape architects, because we are dealing with the environment. So we have to constantly sought to maintain a harmonious balance between human and nature. Okay, I give you, there are actually a lot of examples, but I give you just a bit and pieces because I'm not going to take long in terms of the presentation of the slide. I'll give you an example in the during the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, in terms of land management, talking about land, the lay of the land, Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam adopted a linked zone called Hima, which is in violet zone or pasture, which is an area set aside for the conservation of natural capital, field such as field, forest, wildlife, where grazing and wood cutting are restricted, where certain animal species are protected. I think in urban planning, most probably in land use planning, maybe Dr. Azila has come across about this, the word Hima. But actually, this is very interesting because I just came across this recently. But I think this is very similar to my study of green infrastructure network, where it is used for conservation, meaning that the concept of sustainability stewardship of land is not a recent agenda. It has been it has been there during the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in terms of his management of land in Islamic ways. Okay, and also knowing the fact we have to take care of the land, we have to practice to have a practice that do not harm, which is a concept of good. Islam seek protect and preserve the environment. For example, I have a few examples here, just a very general example. We can have it more specific, detail up, but here I've given these three examples. Avoid major or drastic changes to existing place that we live in, so that in some ways we will not degrade the natural environment. Everybody knows that. We have to avoid major or drastic changes. If we build on the hillside, we have to make sure we don't do cut and fill too much. There are certain rules to that. Everybody in the built environment knows that. Okay. Secondly, is the natural resources must be utilized with great care because most of them are non-renewable. The earth, the soil should be conserved because they are the medium for growing food. Talking about food, even in a densely populated area, we as a designer, we have to set aside to put some land for a community to grow food, because that has been practiced, has been what we call supported in Islam. And at the same time, we have to improve the quality of life of the people in terms of providing recreational areas for our mental health and our physical health, and in terms of good environment overall. Okay, that's talking about land or landform in terms of how we deal with the natural resources in a good manner. The second spatial materials is plants or softscape material that we use when we are designing the built environment. There are lessons that we can learn from the Quran in terms of the functions of plant. It has been in the Quran, there are many ayat talking about plants. All are talking about the existence, its abundance, divergence of a variety of species of trees, plants on the earth. And it is being beautifully mentioned in the Quran. I'm not going to read all of this. I think when we read the Quran, this is a translation, I think we can, all of us basically know the meaning of it. Unless we have tafsir. I'm not in an Islamic studies background, so it is based from my understanding. I think everybody, when we put a certain translation, we are able to understand it. Okay, for example, I read one of the ayat. Allah says, the first ayat, and the earth we have spread and set upon its mountain firm and caused it to bring forth plants of all beauteous kind, showing that Allah has given us a lot of bounty for us to be grateful. And it is also as a reminder in Surah Kahf, ayat 7, and also in other surah. If you look at, okay, this is the next slide, talking about many verses. Of course, many verses touches upon plants in various contexts, talking about its function in different contexts. Here in the presentation, I managed to put maybe 4. I think there are more of the benefits of plants mentioned in the Quran, but I'm just going to put here 4. I'm going to detail up only 2. Okay, the first one is environmental equilibrium. So I would like to share this morning. My professor WhatsApp me, and he gave a one very meaningful. It's very related with the point talking about the environmental equilibrium of plants. Okay, he said maintaining equilibrium of local ecosystem, for example, if we have a garden, is ensuring its well-being, right? This is a part of the goal of World Economic Synergy View, the United Nations. okay, the views of the United Nations. That is maintaining the essential quantity of plant species to provide enough food and shelter for animals and small organisms. Thus, no waste occur and fairness to all creatures. This is an Islamic view. Yeah, this is an Islamic view talking about environmental equilibrium. Therefore, in designing everyday landscape, we have to at least reflect back on Furqan, refer back to the Quran, talking about the importance of this information. Just talking about plants. Okay, the second one is plants is in the Quran can be an analogy for a person or attitude of a person for righteousness or for stability. For example, bad words are like a bad tree. It is uprooted from earth with no stability. Also, it also referring to the to an attitude of a person was if there is one ayat talking about the fruits that are multiplying. The fruits of a tree is multiplying. It's like charity that you do is never ending. I'm not sure whether what's ayat it is, but it's there. Yeah, and the third one is for sustenance, of course, for the food production, for processing of food, and so on. And last but not least, we adopt it in our landscape design in terms of its and principles. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to detail up only two of the functions. Talking about utilitarian or sustenance in terms of the bountiful types of plant species that Allah has made. Okay, plants mentioned in the Quran are such as pomegranate, dates, olive, figs, grapes, herbs, ginger, garlic, lentils, onion, cucumber, mustard, flower. Right? Allah speaks about His creative design and the nutrition available from the natural. This is as an encouragement to eat healthily, right? And to plant our own food so that we are able to reap the benefits of its health, yeah, nutrition. Yeah. The Quran also contains horticulture information and mention the medicinal properties of it. I think scholars have also done the research about this, in which we can explore further in your readings and so on. And of course, the Prophet ﷺ encouraged the sustainable use of fertile land and making unused land to be productive for planting tree. Any land that we find that is barren, unused, and so on is better for us to work on it so that it become fertile and it's become a source of sustenance for humankind. So that is considered a charitable deed, as narrated by Bukhari in hadith Rasulullah SAW. There is none amongst the believers who plant a tree or sows a seed and then a bird and a person or an animal is thereof, but it is regarded as having given a charitable gift for which there is great recompense. Yeah, meaning that ada balasan yang bagus in terms of we got reward from it. Even there is a reminder saying that even if doomsday starts and a person has a palm seed blink or a palm shoot in his hand, he should plant it. Our deeds should be continuous even the end of the world is near, right? So we should do our duty as Khalifah. In terms of lesson, talking about the aesthetic of plants, Allah has mentions the gardens of paradise as well as gardens on earth. Gardens of paradise is the rewards given to the believers who enters paradise, in which the bounty is endless, very continuous, all everlasting. Yeah, they reap the benefit in terms of the fruits and the shade and the beauty of it in the paradise. So is it indicating the abundant, attractive, with large foliage and indescribable colors, indicating the beautiful scene that earth reveal, indicating its function as source of food, shade, or canopy. having plants is comfortable for you. But also Allah says, Allah also give us the gardens on earth. The only thing is that we are the one who are managing it. Yeah, we are the one who should act as Khalifah, take care of this garden on earth. Yeah. For example, here I will read from this ayat, Surah Al-An'am, ayat 99. And it is He who sends down rain from the sky, and we produce thereby the growth of all things. We produce from it greenery, from which we produce grains arranged in layers, and from the palm trees and emerging fruits are clustered hanging low. And we produce gardens of grapevines and olives and pomegranates, similar yet varied, showing that the variety of the bounty that Allah has given us. Look at each of its fruit when it's sealed and at its ripening. Indeed, in that are signs for people who believe. So we have to reflect on the bounty that Allah has given us and look at our task as a Khalifah. Are we taking care of the resources? Okay, in terms of design, what landscape architect can adopt from the aesthetic principle of plants in landscape design is such as talking about plants diversity and the morphological principle as visual foundation in the composition of space. For example, successions of plants create rhythm and repeated element mentioned in the surah. For example, Surah Al-Kahfi, ayat 32 to 33, talking about when there is a sense of rhythm when we plant palm trees with other crops. That are the lessons that we learn in terms of principles of design, in which we adopt it and we compose it, such as I put here one image, nicely put together the palms, the shrubs, the trees together, and it becomes a beautiful scene. Edit in terms of section or from the top view and so on. So those are the principles that we learn from the Quran. It is in the Western books, in our reference book and so on, but the Quran has mentioned that also even earlier. Yeah. As physical element that provide a barrier, a backdrop for privacy, as useful backdrop for accent and features in the landscape. So landscape architects learn the principles and we adopt it in our design because we have lots of characteristics of plants, yeah, in terms of their form. For example, especially tree. So we have many types of trees with different shape and their characteristic, and we use the principles of design that we learn from the Quran, the aesthetic principle, in order for us to achieve architectural and aesthetic function. To create theme, to create focal point, welcoming, identity. We want to enhance the building facade. We want to soften building outline. We give sense of direction. We give shade, comfort, unifying effects, all the benefits of tree, especially when we are dealing with the built environment in an urban area. Okay, the third spatial material that landscape architects use is water element. Okay, water element is very important for designing in landscape architecture or even for the built environment professions. So the words of water appears at least 63 times in the Quran and also reversed 52 times. Other types of water elements mentioned such as fountain, spring, rain, cloud, hill, and wind. So these are taken for resources from other authors. Yeah. So these are among the ayat talking about the values of water. Water is very important for all living things, giving life to the earth. It will put growth for every other living things. And the last ayat I put here is actually for our reminder or even warning. Okay, Allah says in in Surah Al-Waqi'ah, ayat 68 to 70, have you seen the water which you drink? Was it you who sent it down from the rain cloud, or did we send it? Were it our will, we could have made it bitter. Why then do you not give thanks? So when we are designing a water element, we should always contemplate on the ayat from the Quran, from Allah's word. Yeah? So in the natural environment and natural landscape, the natural water resources that we are reaping the benefits of, such as the waterfall, stream, lake, pond, river, and oceans. There are lots of benefits. But at the same time, we learn to use the character and motion of water in the natural landscape to adapt in our designing the built environment, because water doesn't have any container. So we as designer, we put it in container, we put it so that it can fall, it can be such as in a pond, it can become static water, it can become flowing water, and it becomes falling water elements, because we are the best of what we call Allah's creation. We are genius lah. We are we are human being that Allah's given a good brain. So we are able to design this element from the resources that Allah has given us. But we have to remember in terms of our task as a Khalifah. So lesson from the value of water is in terms of if we know that it is valuable, of course we want to protect it, we want to preserve it as much as possible, because it is life providing for any all kinds of living things, for habitat, for water supply, for irrigation, for drainage, for processing, transportation, recreational use, and the scenic value. Allah creates life through water, sustain it by streams, the rain, rivers, and ocean. They are homes for so many creatures. So we as a Khalifah, we have to protect the resources, the valuable resources. Now they say that in the future, water will become more valuable than any other material in this world. Yeah, because it is become nowadays because of our own hands, become polluted and so on. So that will become the most valuable resources in this world in the near future. In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, regarding the water resources, in order to protect the land with water, the Prophet ﷺ adopted zone known as haram. Haram areas are often drawn up around wells and water sources to protect the groundwater table from overpumping. So this is, I think, one of the concept that we need to explore more. I have not yet explored it further in terms of the concept of hikmah and haram. So that inshallah, that one will be such a good concept that we can, as a Muslim, we can explore and do research on. Okay, for landscape architect, of course, water becomes the most unique resources that we can use in order to design the built environment, especially in harsh urban condition. So design with water can stimulate the mind and captivate attention. So it is very versatile. Yeah? So an open space, usually when we design it, of course we want to put water, because most importantly, the benefits for a person or for humankind is that it can actually give good psychological effect to the people. That's why we want to go, if we want to go for a recreational site, we will go to somewhere, coastal area, lake area, somewhere that we can hear, we go to find the waterfall and so on. So because we are attracted to water, we are connected with water for its size, sound, and recreational uses. The presence of water in design is for health and well-being benefits. It gives therapeutic effect. So it offers multi-sensory experience, which is good for our psychological well-being. It can reduce our stress, lower heart rate, blood pressure, increase feelings of tranquility, positive emotional responsiveness, improve concentration and perception, and also memory restoration. These are from the research. Okay, the Western research talking it's on water, but in the Quran, Allah has mentioned it hundreds and hundreds of times, the value of it. So we should remember that we have to utilize it to our best capability. So we can see here Okay, when we design, of course, we try to use every means of possible to contain the water so that it can give various kind of effects. Okay, it can sprout, it can be static, flow, it can fall, and so on. So that is such a versatile resource, not only for utilitarian but also for design. Okay. So the final one is talking about landscape resource in terms of the built element, hardscape and structures. So those are what we call, we landscape architect, we call it landscape architectural palette. Like an artist, they have a color and their canvas. So we have these 5 elements, yeah, to compose in order for us to define space. In terms of the built element, of course, they are built, but they are taken from the natural resources in order to make material for us to build things. As Allah says, indeed, we created humans in the best form. Of course, we intelligent, and human being as intelligent beings, we have the responsibility to care for the resources, to care for the mineral, water and soil that make these building materials for us to build. So that's for reminder to us. Okay, even when we building things, nice thing, compose it in very nice manner. So it's a remembrance of Allah, yeah, as an ibadah for us when we relate it to the concept of Islam. Why we are taking these resources to build pavement. Pavement is for people to use it safely, so that is an ibadah. You get reward from it because the niyat, the early niyat when you are laying the pavement, okay, building the shelter, that will become in ibadah for us as a landscape architect, insyaAllah. Okay, so that is what we call amanah. Believe in Allah, respect nature and the resources. Men are prohibited to destroy, damage and pollute the environment and natural resources from his design and action. So our action in whatever we do, it must be absence of corruption, as Allah warned us, yeah, in this ayat, many ayat in the Quran. For example, ayat surah 28, surah 2 and surah 30 here. Let me read one of it. Allah says, and surah 28, yeah, ayat 77, and do not desire corruption in the land. Indeed, God does not do this. Okay, so those are the 4 landscape architectural spatial materials that I would like to draw in terms of examples that relate with the Quran. I think there are more things that we can narrow down, we can propose in terms of design, but I think that should be enough lah in terms of in the context of this presentation. And the third part is actually the conclusion, yeah, in terms of our roles as Khalifah. Okay, what I've presented just now is talking about the values of the resources in, and what Allah says in terms of the resources as our lessons, reminder, or even warning to us as our role as a Khalifah on this earth. But mostly we see that those become just theory, not practice. Because because we see the disconnection between what we have been presented in many webinars talking about Islamic attitude, environmental activity, because there must be certain issues. For example, economics take precedent over everything else. Thus, we value short-term gain rather than the long-term gain, sustainability for our future generations. Just a reminder for me and for all in this webinar, we try as much as possible to remember that in the life of Muslim, Islam has provided a complete system as guidance. So as much as possible, we try to follow it. If you remember that with a good niyat, insyaAllah, we will design a built environment that is sustainable. We will achieve it. Okay, sustainable has been it's being repeatedly. We talk about sustainable, but it has been there already. We know that, but the action plan tu tak ada. We have to start from us individual. Kita kena start from a small unit individual, then kita go to family unit, then to the community and to the bigger scale system, so that everything will be in place. We should start from understanding awareness for ourselves. Yeah. So in terms of the Islamic system, it's already been there, talking about a Muslim should have tawheed according to Sharia and akhlaq. Okay, I'm just putting here 3. I think there are more that we can follow. Just giving you example of these 3 things. Yeah. Okay, let me go to the second part first, because I think tawheed is the pillar of all things. Yeah. Talking about Sharia, a Muslim professional carries his role as Khalifa and carries amanah in parallel with Sharia. If we follow the Sharia, inshallah, everything, we will have no corruption, no harm. We can do good deeds and all those kind of things. Okay, Sharia is the law of Islam, as mentioned in Surah 45. That aims to harmonize the diverse aspect of creation in a holistic relationship with the notion to submit to Allah. So the source of Sharia is, of course, the Quran and Sunnah, and secondary is al-Ijma, al-Qiyas, and al-Ijtihad. Okay, it is instituted for the maslahah. Sharia is put for the welfare of all community, for the universal common good and welfare of the entire creation. I'm not going to go in detail about this. Just giving you a bit of summary in terms of what we should do as a Muslim in order for us to become a Muslim professional that take care of the environment, so we achieve the sustainable goal. The third is akhlaq. Of course, it should start from us, from a Muslim, for an individual. A Muslim professional carries his role as Khalifa and carries amanah in accordance with the good moral conduct. Meaning that we have to consolidate our activities in a lawful manner, beneficial to others. Okay. To be whatever that we are doing should be beneficial to others, and the practice should relate with our relationship with Allah, human being, and other creatures. Even the smallest act, such as the removal of harmful things from road. There are many good conduct that has been spelled out in hadith, in the Quran. We just need to follow it. For example, talking about cleanliness, clean and tidy surroundings, rooms, houses, neighborhoods, park and roads should be in our good moral conduct, which is akhlaq. And last but not least is tawheed. Okay, tawheedic approach. In our curriculum in IUM, we are blessed that we are learning in IUM. All curriculum, all subjects are embedded with tawheedic approach. So tawheedic approach is indispensable if you want to act good in terms of akhlaq and follow the Sharia, right? Meaning that the belief in the existence and oneness of Allah and His supremacy of being by our expression and the absolute belief of La ilaha illallah. If we believe, we have the absolute belief of La ilaha illallah, of course, we will establish good relationship with Allah. And then we strive to achieve success in the hereafter, and also not only hereafter but also in this earthly life. We have to have success on the earth in order to achieve success in the hereafter. So for the first, to establish good relationship with Allah, we should follow the guidance as prescribed by Islam in dealing with the resources that I've discussed before. And it relates to have a good relationship with Allah. Of course, we have a good relationship with man and the environment. Hablu minallah, hablu minannas, hablu bi'ah or Allah. Yeah, and even in our planning principle doctrine, in terms of environmental ethics has already been spelled out, talking about fairness, ihsan, trust and authority, unity, knowledgeable, individual and society rights, friendliness, peace, tolerance, sensitivity, joint consultation or smart partnership, cleanliness and beauty, economical and efficiency, natural resources and conservation. So those are already been outlined. We just need to have a bit of knowledge about it in order to act in a good manner. This is I think the last slide. I'm trying to put in actually for my reminder as well, but for my reminder and for sharing in terms of the summary of Tawheed in order for us to achieve not only the hereafter but also in the earthly life. For me, by the expression and our absolute belief in La ilaha illallah, we will become a Muslim that have motivation. Kalau kita tak ada motivation, we don't have goal. Kita tak ada long term goal or even short term goal. So we must be a motivated Muslim. When we have motivation, of course, our aim for a Muslim is of course to achieve Jannah. Okay, ukhrawi akhirat mindset. We want to be in Jannah. Tak ada siapa pun nak duduk dalam on the opposite of Jannah kan. So in order to do this, we must have an earthly life goal, which is our saving, ibadah, in terms of ibadah. We must have a savings in order for us to be here. In order to be here also, we should have integrity. That is the ultimate goal. Integrity. If a Muslim has integrity, he will follow all aspects of Muslim's teaching. And a Muslim professional that has integrity, of course, the build form, the resulting form that we build, no matter where we are, will be very good. So that is actually the diagram that I put to remind myself. Right? So inshallah, this is the last slide. Okay, thank you very much for your participation. Whatever weakness come from myself and whatever good things come from Allah. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you to Associate Professor Dr. Mazlina Mansor, okay, for such an inspiring talk on the Islamic-Conscious design in landscape architecture. So basically, before we entertain the questions from the participants, I would like to summarize or taking the key points of what been presented by Dr. Mazlina just now. So basically, this topic is very pertinent in our daily life because we are dealing with the environment. The human being has a constant interaction with the environment. So we are interacting with the air, water, soil, flora, and fauna. That is for sure. Okay, that is for sure. So now, from her presentation, basically he laid down the principles from the Quran and Sunnah. Okay, from the Quran and Sunnah. So now we are trying to learn about how to apply it in the current practice of landscape architecture. Okay, so for that matter, we need to bear in mind first, okay, as a matter of principle first, okay. So we have to be aware, or we have to be receptive to the idea of whatever that been created on earth. Okay, we have the air, water, soil, flora, and fauna is a sustenance for us. It is provided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a sustenance. Sustenance here means that this is for our life. We can use it, okay? We can have it, and then we can mold it into the built environment. Such is natural resources is open for us as a Khalifah on earth. To transform it into the built environment for our own use, okay? But basically, it is bound to certain ethics principles of Islam, okay? So we have to understand that Allah provides us with all the natural resources, for us to use it, and at the same time for us to manage it properly for our good living. Okay. But on top of that, in any mischievous that we done, okay, then we will experience the repercussion of that mischievous. That is guaranteed. That is what that is warned by Allah. So that's why is in we could find nowadays that we have maybe extraordinary flooding, drought, climate change, all those things. But somehow we have to reflect what we have done to our environment or what we have done to our natural resources. This is a promise by Allah Subhanahu wa Taala in the Quran. Okay, this world has been created for you as a sustenance, but upon mischievous, you will feel the repercussion of your wrongdoing. Okay, so that's why we have to reflect what we have done to our environment. Okay, basically that is the basic thing that we have learned from Islam. Okay, with regard to the Quran and Sunnah when we talk about Islamic-Conscious design in landscape architecture. So basically that has been articulated by Associate Professor now. And then he shared with us some of the examples from the landscape architecture perspective. So basically in this regard, this is a challenge to landscape architect. Okay, by virtue of your name as a landscape architect, so that you are as a Khalifah entrusted to manage or to mold this environment for the use of the human being, but in a proper manner with regard confined to the Islamic principles. So because definitely whatever impact that come to us now is on in this world. Okay, we might be experiencing drought, flooding, all those things. That is what we will experience in this world. But that mischievous will be questioned back in the day of judgment. Okay, as a landscape architect, it is fardu ain. Okay, it is fardu ain on the landscape architect. So whatever that he or she has learned from this discipline, that to preserve the environment, to do a good thing for the environment, okay? Because you are entrusted with such a professional task for it. So basically those are the basic principles from Islam. But now, how we are going to translate all these principles into application, okay? So basically in Malaysia, as mentioned by Dr. Mazlina just now, we have a lot of things to be referred to actually. So especially in our law. Much of our law is talking about the environment. Okay, it can be related to the landscape architecture impact. For example, first thing first is tree preservation order in the Act 172. It's very clearly related to landscape area of study, in which that must be exercised approval, okay, for the development project. So first, Act 172 for the Part 5 Tree Preservation Order. That is the source of law for us to do a good thing for our environment, translating the Islamic principles that we already learned just now. Okay, other than that is we may also refer to Environmental Quality Act 1974. It's clearly mentioned about the protection of the environment. But if you zoom into the Environmental Quality Act for the prescribed activities, Order 1987, again, it clearly mentioned about many categories of development that will require environmental impact assessment report. Okay, so the law is there actually, okay, to govern our treatment or our interaction with the environment. Okay, that is for the prescribed activities. Other than that, we also have National Forestry Act. If we study the National Forestry Act, very much of the provision is related to the forest, but also to the environment, because forest is a house of animal, flora, soil, water, and air. Okay, much has been talking about forest, about the natural resources. In my study of the forest governance in Malaysia, there's the idea of hima and harim just now, or harim or haram just now. Okay, so basically, if I may touch a bit on the concept of hima and harim just now, many literatures these days on this thing. So basically, if we can go through some elements of the hima, because after this we will go to the harim. Okay, hima is grazing is prohibited, cutting is permitted during specific periods. This is when plants reach to a certain height or growth. After they flower and bear fruits, the cut branches are taken aside of the hima to feed the livestock. The tribe council specifies the number of people from each family allowed to do cutting. Certain trails are specified for the workers to prevent destruction of soil fertility. Certain days are allocated for men, others for women. So basically, this has been a very traditional practice in Islam, where the community was provided with the hima as a grazing field, okay, for their livestock. Okay, that is that it can be modernized in our context basically. Okay, grazing and cutting is allowed only after flowers and fruits are produced. This allows natural seeding of the soil for the next year of season. Grazing is allowed all year. The number and type of animals are specified. No restriction on grass cutting. Reserved for beekeeping. Grazing is allowed only after the flowering season. These reserves are closed for 5 months of the year, including the spring months. Okay, reserve for forest trees. Okay, cutting is only allowed for great emergencies or acute needs. Reserving a woodland to stop desertification of an area or sand dune encroachment. So basically, these are the principles of hima that has been practiced in Arab world. Okay, but definitely it can be adopt and adapt for our local context of Malaysia. But the idea is hima is to provide a space for the community. Okay, so this is such for the welfare of the people. Okay, that is the concept of hima. But nowadays, maybe this is not very familiar in here compared to harim. Okay, when we studied the National Forestry Act, actually the idea of hutan simpan, the idea of reserve forest, is quite similar to the idea of harim, where the forest is conserved for certain purposes. Okay. During my interview with the pejabat tanah, it's clearly mentioned this is very strict in Islamo, because sometimes we might find in other places the issue of reserve forest ni sometimes orang digazette, something like that. But in Selangor, basically the process is very strict. Whenever they are going to develop one forest area, so that the reserve forest area, so there must be a replacement. Okay. But we also can read from the newspaper. Sometimes they will open up a new place for plantation whatsoever. But we have to check whether this is a hutan simpan or sometimes this is a private land. Okay, this is a private land. But I encountered also a report on the, if you encounter this kind of report also, on the, there is one air terjun kering, air terjun kering. So I managed to have some information about this lah, from the, so basically the idea is, there are quarry activities. Okay, the point that I want to share with you now is actually how we should be very careful with our activities in the forest area, including the quarry. Because by right, whenever this happens, there must be several ponds, okay, before the air can go to the air terjun. Okay, so what happened here is that they didn't follow the right way of managing the debris from the quarry itu. So that's why air yang pergi ke air terjun itu kira air yang berlumpur, yang belum melalui proses several ponds tadi.
Filtering lah.
Filtering. Dia tak filtering proses tu tak berlaku properly. So that's why bila dia pergi ke air terjun tu dia jadi quite heavy, dia mendap. So that's why mendap tu sampai boleh air terjun tu jadi kering. Okay, why I share this thing is basically, okay, we learn this now. Islam kata this environment, these natural resources are created by Allah for us. We must manage it properly. Okay, follow the sunnah alam. Failing which it will be considered mischievous. So mischievous that we will have to experience dia punya impact. Okay, so for example now, instead of we can enjoy that air terjun, so the impact upon our mischievous, okay, is upon our unethical thing. So now we cannot have that air terjun already. Okay, as simple as that, because that is the promise of Allah in the Quran. When you did something wrong to what has been given to you, then you yourself will experience it. That is in this world. Okay? The same thing will be questioned back on the day after. Okay, of what we have done. So that's why we have to be very careful in our undertakings as a landscape architect, as to whatsoever profession in the environment, dealing with the environment. Okay, so that is the idea of having this now. So we conserve or we reserve certain forests for the natural purposes. Okay, that's why I would suggest to you, if you can visit the website of the National Forestries for Peninsular Malaysia website, you can go to the circular, to the list of circular, so where they detail out the 10 types of forests in Malaysia. Okay, this is upon the provision in the National Forestry Act. So that website, it's compiled the circular related to it. So you may find, okay, for example, if this forest, this forest is meant for pemeliharaan binatang or pemeliharaan certain species, plant species yang special yang ada di Malaysia. So they will at least what are the criteria that should be. Okay, what would be the criteria for forest to conserve that forest? Okay, you may visit the website. I found that website is very comprehensive in terms of the literature for the forestry punya things lah. Because we are talking about plants, we are talking about flora and fauna, soil, everything about the natural resources. Okay. Other than that, we also have National Heritage Act. National Heritage Act also got something to do with the natural heritage. Natural heritage. Okay. So you may find certain principles, policy, or law governing national conservation in the National Heritage Act. So, and other than that, from our study also, the Jabatan Landscape Negara also play quite a very important role also in natural resources punya conservation, okay, or preservation. Okay, so what I want to share here is that we have a lot of laws, we have strategies, we have policies, we have circulars, but now how about the implementation? Okay, and who is doing this? Who will ensure that the environment is properly protected? Okay, the policy, the law is not sufficient, but it requires personal commitment, personal competency as well. So that's why from our study, the preliminary that we found here is that this is about competency, enforcement, and integrity. Okay, or I will put that integrity the first. Integrity, enforcement, and competency. Okay, so whether we are strong enough, whether we are capable enough to exercise our role, to use our authority or power for us to preserve the environment. So that is quite a great challenge for us lah in the built environment punya profession. Okay, I think that's what I can share at the moment, okay, from what has been discussed by Dr. Mazlina Mansor, okay, about the Islamic principles or Islamic conscious design in landscape architecture, and then what we can learn, and then what the Malaysian law says about this area of study. So now I think we may open for the question and answer. Okay.
So far tak ada.
So far, okay. We check in the chat box. So far, there is no question. Okay, but actually you can start writing. I just give this summary for you to enable you to write a question. Actually, so but no question so far in the chat box. Okay, we shall allow you to write any question that you will ask the speaker. Do you have any question? Okay, so if none, I think you may take your time, okay? While maybe if Dr. Mazlina have anything else to add on?
Okay, in presenting this talk or this webinar sharing, it's actually quite nervous lah for me to share with you in terms of the Islamic perspective of our role as a Khalifah, because of course I'm not in a background of Islamic study. When we refer to the Quran, we have to be very careful in ensuring that we are not misleading. So I hope that whatever that I have put in the slide presentation just now is clear for everyone in terms of the direct the translation, the meaning of it, trying to convey in terms of the relationship between the resources that we use to design. But it's a bit, the presentation is a bit general because I do put example specifically in a certain context, such as, for example, when you are designing a community, this is what you should do and so on. But I think Dr. Azila has given us a lot of input in terms of the law and policy. The only thing that we need to do is just to implement it, and that is our witness in Malaysia, talking about enforcement, talking about integrity. For me, if a person, a Muslim, we are aware that we are a Muslim and we are a Khalifah, of course we automatically will have the value of integrity, because everything that we do will start with a niyat. A good niyat, of course, inshallah, will produce a good result. But we have to improve further in terms of that. In terms of enforcement, actually basically is talking about the individual's responsibility. Kalau one person is responsible, another person is responsible, dia akan jadi one unit with a good integrity. That unit will disseminate the information to the committee and do necessary things. Itu je dia punya formula sebenarnya.
Okay, so there is one question here from Dati Novina for our speaker to elaborate on how to advise the client that cutting of hills or slope or cut trees to place the development should respect the environment apart from enforcement and existing laws. Okay, if I may share a bit on this, is how to advise the client. So basically this is talking about heart lah, I think. Dia macam hati ke hati. If someone tu dia memang ada that kind of conscious, so that's what the Mazlina just now Islamic-Conscious, dia ada that kind of dalam his heart, and then dia tahu
The good intention,
good intention, dia tahu dia punya hubungan dia. So when I can ask how to advise, maybe we can have to do some tazkirah sikit, right?
and show the rules and regulation. Okay, you cannot cut. If the slope is 25% gradient, this is how you should do it. I mean, talk in a manner in terms of finding the evidence, in terms of rules and regulation by the law, at the same time giving tazkirah lah kot.
So I think that is the available way first lah, by sharing whatever the laws, and then of course we need to talk heart to heart, upon which failing which in conserving or preserving the environment is the impact is on us. To me lah, we can talk to the client. The impact is on us. We will experience the impact in this world, and double with in the day after, we will be questioned back of our doing to that environment, of our decision, of our how we exercise our authority, for example, in approving or considering the planning approval. Okay.
Yeah, to add to that as well, before we start giving tazkirah, we have to also tell the clients the benefits of actually retaining a certain things. This is what you get. I mean, in terms of the asset that you will get of not doing a certain development that opposing to the law. So this is what you get. For example, you get a nice view. A nice view towards something. If we retain the height of the building in a certain, maybe up to 3-story height when building on the hill slope. So this is what we get. We get a nice natural vista to the certain views. So we have to educate lah, giving knowledge why certain thing can be done, what are the benefits, and why we cannot do certain thing. This is what we get.
Okay, I think that is fair enough. The response from our speaker, okay, on the questions by Dr. Lumina is now. Okay, so here I'm referring to recent episode of Presence Hill Hotel development and also the development proposed at Pelang Jaya Open Field. Everyone know of the laws, but this is so that's why just now we are talking about integrity, and so this is very challenging for the approving authority at the local planning authority lah. So basically, it will be more professional in the built environment. Okay, so maybe Dr. Mazlina, you have anything else to add on this question about the present hills development?
Everyone know of the law, but why is this happening? So I'm asking that as well.
For example, if I may share, the Highland Towers case. The Highland Towers case, any one of you interested to read about this case? The Highland Towers case ni happened dalam 1992. So the building was built in 1978. Okay, 1978. The report of the case is about 73 pages. Okay, the report of the case. Okay, so actually this is very pertinent to the environmental protection. Okay, why it happened? You just imagine, in 1978, they built that Highland Towers. Okay, and then in 1992 or 93, something like that, it collapsed. So the cause of collapse here is actually, according to the report, okay, 1992, I'm still in the university, okay. The reason to that collapse, the cause of that collapse is actually the land clearing on top of that hill by the one bank in Malaysia. So they clear up the land on top of the hill for a bungalow lot. Okay, when they clear up that top of the hill, so all the debris is not properly managed. So all the debris will go into the stream. Go to the stream and then it cause clog of the stream. Okay. After the 10 days continuous raining day, rain. So bila kuantiti air yang banyak, debris yang tidak dimanage dengan baik, so dia clog dekat sungai yang mengalir di situ, menyebabkan dia overflow. Bila dia overflow and then tanah di sekitar situ menjadi lemah, orang kata lembik.
Weak lah.
Dari
Dia
weak,
punya
dia punya
stability tu.
Stability tu dia dah terganggu. So that's what it caused to the collapse of that tower. Okay, and at the same time, so then it comes to our mind, how you design that building. Is that because we know that designing a building, you have to take into account the surrounding environment. Being at the hilly area, there must be certain precaution in terms of the design, the engineering work, the
Ada
architectural
guideline-nya.
design.
Memang ada guideline untuk hill slope.
Kan? Ada guideline. But when we check, so basically, maybe lah during that time, in 1978, tu maybe I don't know the law during that time. So the architect or actually the architect for that building is not an architect. So he is a draftsman. Okay, and then when we check again, so this is a couple with the engineer tu is macam brothers, adik-beradik, brothers dia lah. So jadi, so that is reported in that case, Iron Towers. So that's why after certain period, and then when the mushrooming lah, the development area tu, so dia area tu dia jadi tak stabil. So that's why it brought to the collapse of that tower. So pursuant to that, that happened in 1993. In 1995, Act 172 been amended to insert a clause on TPO. Okay, if you notice, Part 5 yang tree preservation order is actually following or in pursuant of that Highland Towers collapse. Okay, so this is quite close example to us. Whenever we fail to exercise our role as Khalifah, that is to consider the environment in our development project, sooner or later we will experience the impact. The from our mischievous. So that is a cycle. Sooner or later. So that's why we really need to play our role, to observe what we have learned during our as a landscape architecture, a landscape architect or any profession in the built environment. Try to learn or try to live within the environment, try to understand the nature of our creation for us to be more diligent in our dealing, especially in the planning approval, for example, designing a building or in doing the landscaping of the area. Okay, so hopefully then we will be safe from the day of judgment. Okay, be questioned on what we are doing. And I think
Looking at the case that of Highland Towers, from the start, lagi kan the process is not according to the rule. Actually, we have many laws, policies that are already there. Dah strong, very strong. The only thing is that kita punya action tu, kita punya role tu, we are not following the rule. Siapa yang tak follow the rule mestilah ada certain akibatnya. Sama lah juga macam like this kind of process. From the earlier start of designing lagi, orang yang not supposed to design dah act as an architect. Tu yang jadi dia ada apa chain reaction dominance effect.
So dia punya professional liability lah. So in the event of negligence, so you will be asked of your professional liability. Okay. Since there is no other questions from the participant, okay, I think we will end here the session, the webinar session by Associate Professor Dr. Mazlina Mansor. Okay, so I think that's all for now. I would like to thank you all for your participation. Okay, hope you will join again our webinar series that was scheduled on the 27th of May. So for the title, Islamic Principles of Housing Design, okay, or House Design, something like that. Okay, so this will be presented by Assistant Professor Architect Dr. Srazali Arifin. Okay, so we will try to blend the Islamic principles in designing a house. Okay, so we will try to apply whatever principles that we learn in Islam to a design of a house. Okay, that would be our next series of webinar on the 27th of May at 9:30. Okay, we will start. So we will distribute the promotion slide for that talk. With that, thank you all. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.